What's good, YouTube? Today we're going to run you through 5 specs that I think are going to be safe choices for the first raid of Dragonflight. I am a little bit under the weather, so excuse my voice if it's a little bit husky, but we're still getting it done anyway. I do just want to remind you guys quickly to subscribe if you haven't already. 90% of you still aren't subscribed to the channel, but the more I bring it up, the more of you actually subscribe. So if you could drop a sub down below and also leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, that would be greatly appreciated. But without further ado, let's get on with the video. So the first spec that I'd really recommend as a safe choice for raiding in Dragonflight is the Balance Druid. The Balance Druid is looking pretty promising for raids in Dragonflight. It brings great utility to your raid through abilities like Innovate, which you really can never get enough of. Ask your healers, they'd stack boomies if they could. They bring Stampeding Roar as well, which is also a cooldown you're never going to say no to, which we've seen countless times helping raid groups battle movement mechanics that we see so frequently, and obviously the return of Mark of the Wild. This is probably already going to be in your raid group through the different specs of Druid, but it is such a massive buff that the Druid now brings that really cannot be glossed over. Ranged has also consistently been a safer choice for raid due to so much of the player base being melee dominated, so that coupled with Balance Druid's amazing sustained damage once they're ramped up, especially in spread AoE scenarios, really helps cement this spec's place in this list. They're also a very tanky spec through the likes of Barkskin and your default Moonkin armor, just passively mitigating more damage than other specs, further amped up through talents like Thick Hide, and also being able to drop into bear form to handle any dangerous mechanics makes Balance a great choice for dealing with soak mechanics, especially as they're so self-sustainable through their off heals. Balance Druid really is always a solid choice for raid, mainly because of their utility they bring, which has no diminishing returns, as you're never going to have too many Innovates or Stampeding Roars. Paired with their great spread AoE damage, the spec really does deserve a spot on this list. Enhancement Shaman is the next spec that I'd recommend as a safe pick for raiding in Dragonflight. Even after the gutting it received on beta, it is still definitely a powerhouse in damage, especially in single target and funnel scenarios, which is going to be amazing for dumping that priority damage into the boss, which is obviously the end goal of all raid fights. But it's not just about the Shaman's damage that makes this spec so valuable. The real selling point of Enhance is Wind Fury Totem. Since the reintroduction of Wind Fury Totem, this spec has seen a lot more play in a raid setting due to buffing up not only your damage, but also your melee group's damage by quite a big chunk dependent on the spec of your actual party. Arms Warriors, I'm looking at you. They have gotten more tanky coming into this expansion through being able to beef up their Astral Shift, as well as now bringing Stone Skin Totem, which could actually be massive for your raid depending on the fight. Reducing physical damage by 10% for your party could alone be enough reason to stack an Enhancement Shaman depending on the encounter. Abilities like Wind Rush Totem never go amiss either. Unfortunately, they're not as good as the likes of Stampeding Roar, however you can always appreciate an AoE movement increase for your raid. Enhanced is looking really solid going into the start of Dragonflight, and specifically a great choice for going into raiding. Next, we have Assassination Rogues. Assassination Rogues have one of the highest single target damage profiles in the game, which is why I'm placing them on this list. This is then furthered by them boasting one of the best execute windows out of all DPS specs as well, which is an insanely valuable trait to bring. The spec is relatively weaker on multi-target fights, but Rogue has 2 other specs that are exceptional in AoE settings, meaning as a class, Rogue is able to excel on pretty much any boss. Also, Rogues in general are very strong defensively through countless abilities like Feint, Evasion, Cloak of Shadows, and Feign Death for situations that would otherwise kill you. These abilities make the Rogue great choices to handle solo mechanics too, which cements their spot in a raid, and furthermore, going into Dragonflight, you will always need at least one Rogue due to their new poison ability, Atrophic Poison, making all mobs they poison deal 3% less damage, which over the course of a fight is going to make a tremendous difference. The Assassination Rogue is very strong across its whole toolkit, but the main reason I've decided to put it on this list is its raw single target damage throughput. Another range spec I want to put into this list is the Warlock. I'm sure it comes as no shock to you because Warlock in general is always a very safe choice for raiding, but in specific this time I'm going with the Demonology Warlock. With what seems to be quite a few fights where stack cleave is present, Demo Warlock is going to be pumping the meters as long as people can hold down the Nether Portal rotation. The main reason for Demo being in this list though is that it has excellent survivability that is only gained coming into this expansion through a lot of talents found in the Warlock class talent tree. The class tree is packed from head to toe with powerful defensive tools that could easily be mistaken for a tank talent tree if you weren't any wiser. To give you some context, they have access to Soul Link, Fell Synergy, Demonic Embrace, Demonic Fortitude, Demonic Skin, Fell Armor, Dark Pact on a 45-second cooldown, Sweet Souls giving you big heals whenever someone uses a health stone, as well as Mortal Coil, just to name a few. This coupled with their unique utility they bring to any raid through gateways helping you maneuver around fights, health stones for an extra health pot every fight, and also being able to summon those people that can never show up on time straight inside the raid makes them vital for any raid comp and a solid pick for raiding this expansion. Finally, we obviously have the Havoc Demon Hunter. Part of me didn't want to put this spec in the list because it was also in the M+ list along with the Demonology Warlock, but I knew I'd get too much backlash even if I stated that it was definitely a safe choice. Nevertheless, Havoc is phenomenal in both single target and AoE encounters. As previously mentioned, with cleave encounters being present across the whole of this raid, Havoc will definitely be up at the top of the meters with other specs as they passively do great cleave damage without actually losing any of their single target DPS. It has amazing survivability as well through passive damage reduction talents and also abilities like Blur and Netherwalk to save you in any tricky situations. They bring Darkness too, which can be a very impactful raid defensive cooldown, not just for themselves, but the value really comes from the raid stacking in it, especially with a Spirit Link totem at the same time. And to round out their kit, they contribute one of the strongest raid buffs in the game through Chaos Brand, which has insane value across your raid group, representing a truly massive amount of damage from just bringing a Demon Hunter in general. I'd like to just do an honourable mention for the Beast Mastery Hunter. Though it's not the strongest spec in the game, I think it's still a great addition to any raid and is actually pretty slept on. Its damage is definitely solid across single target and AoE encounters, and because it's not a bursty spec, it tends to sustain this high damage where other classes fall back down. This, paired with the ability to be completely mobile while keeping 100% uptime on your rotation, is actually huge for the spec, and this is mainly where I think they're being underrated. Once we get into Mythic and these turret classes can't just stand there and cast, BM will climb and become one of the better DPS classes in my honest opinion, especially once we get the bow from the last boss. It is a shame that we don't directly bring any raid buffs and are one of the few specs that actually don't do this, but we do have unique utility like the Sentinel Owl, which although is very niche, may prove to be again very underrated from the class. Additionally, although we may lack survivability too, we do have an immunity through Turtle which can help negate devastating mechanics where we can just solo soak and leave the rest of the raid pumping DPS. So that is why I quickly wanted to mention this spec, as immunities have proved time and time again to be very valuable, and in certain movement heavy fights, I think the Beast Mastery Hunter has a solid shot at being one of the top DPS. So these are my 5 safe classes for the new raid. When it comes to raiding, a lot of the value that you're actually bringing from your class is from your utility. That is not to say that damage does not matter though, but it will be interesting to see how the meta plays out for the raiding composition. Let me know down in the comments if you agree with these classes that I picked, or which ones you would replace and which classes you would replace them with. If you enjoyed the video, please feel free to sub to your boy, and if you liked the video, like the video, and until next time, I'll catch you later.